The next speaker is someone very well known in Hawaii, Dr. Teresita Amore. Her topic is Dendrobium and Anthurium breeding program research updates. Dr. Amore is an assistant researcher in the Department of Tropical Plant and Soil Sciences at the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, where she worked in various capacities in the Anthurium and Dendrobium orchid breeding programs since 1985. She received her BS degree in agriculture from the University of the Philippines at Los Baños and her master's and PhD in horticulture from the University of Hawaii at Manoa under Dr. Haruyuki Kamemoto. And Dr. Mori.
Oh, wait, my notes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me over to share the work that we've been carrying on for decades, I would say. And it's my pleasure to share with the people who have been very instrumental in getting these work done. So we have, as Eric mentioned and Sharon mentioned, a couple of projects that have been funding our research endeavors. The first one is our HDOA grant that we received from HDOA, the New Germplasm 17 grant. This was a $493,000 grant that was awarded to our group that consisted of 8 co-PIs, if I remember correctly. It's one of the largest projects we've had with many participants. Some of the participants are here with us also. So we had the New Germplasm grant, which included several commodities and asked us to work with different community or commodity organizations. So we have potted plants, cut flowers, herbs, vegetables, and tropical fruits. And the goal was to facilitate research, look at reducing importation of potential high-risk products, evaluate new materials, and also distribute this new germplasm, all in the span of 3 years. So yes, it's 30, we are approaching our 18-month. And yes, I'm aware by November we have to turn in our 18-month report to show satisfactory progress. So talking about putting pedal to the metal, we really have to make sure we do our research. And I'm very fortunate to have several co-PIs that have been really equally pressuring each other so we can have some tangible results. So the goal of all of these is to replace high-risk flowers and produce brought into the state. In essence, by developing new germplasm, we will rely less on imports that might harbor more enemies than friends. So that's our goal. Okay. So as I mentioned, it was a big group. And it was a challenge having to combine how do we have with this amount of monies, how do we best serve our constituency in the entire state. So we had a group that was developed that included food crops. I put them first because I'm going to talk about the more important group afterwards. So we had a group dealing with bananas. There's a lot of problems with bananas. Citrus, sweet potato, and taro. And floriculture and nursery crops. And we have a team comprised of myself for cut flower and foliage, Dr. Orville Baldos, who's here with us for the first time in person, doing native Hawaiian landscape plants. Oh, I'm sorry. Cynthia Nazario doing cut flower and foliage, who she's supposed to come today, but she's unable to join us. And then myself with Dendrobium orchids and Anthurium. How important is the crop? Last year, right before we got to the conference, we just found out the value of the commodity. So that was roughly around 74 million. So we're on an upward trend. Sounds good, right? From And so now the value is 77.6 million, and that's for 2017. Next year is going to be an interesting ride. You think about a roller coaster. We're going to have peaks and valleys. We are not looking into a very bright next year, but if we look at long term, with the new germplasm, we hope to ride out the wave, because with the environment not working on our side this calendar year, we're going to face a lot of challenges. But if we pull together with these grants and everybody working together, we hope to have something go up, the product go up in value. So with respect to the crops that we're working on, if you see, I highlighted Dendrobium. Dendrobium is still there. If you combine it, its combined value is about close to 4.5 million, slightly close to palms. Palms is a group. But when you look at the way the reporting is done, Dendrobium is not that bad. We're about over 4 million. And cut Anthurium is about 2.8 million, up from 2.7 million. So yes, we are doing reasonably well. But we shouldn't rest on our laurels, but we should keep on going up, 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 if that's the ideal situation. Now, evaluation and development of new Anthuriums takes a lengthy time. And one of our goals was try to release the, to try to shorten the time to release a new variety. From pollination, it takes about 13 to 15 years almost. So that's like raising a teenager. From seedling selection, it takes about 11, 12, 13 years. So when you really think about it, we make an effort to really look at the field test, because we know that there are juvenility issues, that plants may look good in the first 2 years. If we prematurely say, oh, it's really good, we'll release it. Sometimes problems happen in the 3rd, 4th, even 5th year. So in the past, we had, if you look at our history, we used to release cut flowers a little bit on a shorter scale, but sometimes we felt that they were prematurely released because we find out they might have problems later on. And then we get monikers as Blight Lady for something that we thought. Joanne's laughing because Joanne remembers we had something that we thought was really good, and then when it went on the field, initially it looked good, and then over a few more years past the release time, they started melting. We lost a lot to blight. Then we also see issues with nematodes also, as it has become more and more prevalent. So we do take time for field tests. In that way, we can assure that what we have is something that has withstood not just 2 to 3 years. The other reason too is that many times when we take yield, the younger the plant is, the faster they will produce flowers. So the leaves are produced. The way the anthuriums work, one leaf, one flower. And if we take our early data, we kind of inflate it because the leaves come out faster. But so now we're getting more cautious. It's like learning, we're adapting our evaluation as we go along. That being said, that we're taking more time to go over the field test, that means to say the bottleneck now will be getting materials out fast, readily, after we complete our field test evaluation. So in the meantime, it's our goal that as we're doing field tests, we gotta keep up and maintain the germplasm so that when we're ready, we're ready. So for the HDOA New Germplasm Grant, there was a selection that we had been evaluating for some time. And one variety that we have identified that is ready and the propagules are in the lab is a variety called UH2010. And there's a little story as to how the name came about. Joanne said that she always thought of lava as red. But now with drones and all the photographs, you can see that it looks more orange-yellow. So she thought the name Kipuka, which is the green area surrounded by lava, would definitely encapture what UH 2010 is like. So the name is pretty descriptive. So we have UH 2010, and these are the attributes. It's fairly large, light orange obake. The space size is about 9 inches. If you look at the vase life, it's almost 2 months, and that's without BA. So you're looking at 58.3, 59. I don't know if the growers will feel that it's a little bit too long. Maybe it's something that we can ship out via sea by boat instead of air cargo at the rate it has, but we have a very long vase life. However, like any selection, they have their pluses and minuses. This one seems to be anthracnose susceptible. The weather conditions that we've been having lately are very good for anthracnose development. And so this is a time that we feel, yes, the growers are suffering from anthracnose or having products with anthracnose, but this is a perfect time for us to evaluate which varieties or which selections can hold up to the environmental stress. It appears to be tolerant to bacterial blight, it has straight stems, and it has good substance. Overall, despite its few weaknesses, it's something that we have as something worth releasing. So this is, we meet our midterm objective of 1 variety. Okay. The second objective of the new Germplasm grant was to develop a tissue culture facility at UH Manoa and over here at the CTAR Komohana Research and Extension Center. And this stemmed from the strategic plan that was put together about 2013, almost 5 years ago. Kelvin Sewake is here, and he was our fearless leader of the strategic team effort to try and address germplasm release issues. So knowing that the availability of propagules was going to be problematic or the bottleneck. So we have looked at and identified these 2 areas. So at the University of Hawaii, we also received a supplemental grant from our college to look into developing other systems, such as using a bioreactor to push the propagation of Anthurium micropropagules. So we're just completed year 1, and we have had a new graduate student come in to work on the grant as part of her thesis. So we are on our way, and hopefully we want her to finish up in a timely manner so that we can make our 3rd year, our next 18 months goal to get improved germplasm, our tissue culture system to facilitate germplasm release. Okay. The second grant that I'd like to give updates about is the GIA, the grant that HFNA, the Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association, received a GIA. So we are in almost halfway also on this particular grant. For this particular grant, we have 4 objectives. The first one was facilitate the release of at least 2 cultivars for floriculture that were being cultivated for field planting. So this refers to increasing the number of plantlets that will be distributed to our cooperators, because we usually distribute only 200 plantlets. That does not even fill up 1 bed, or it is very limited. And so 200 plantlets is insufficient to have an idea of how well they'll perform in a commercial setting. And this was also confirmed when we visited Anthura, which is the largest breeder of breeding company for Anthuriums in the world. They find out that ramping up the number of plantlets for testing gives sometimes a different picture from just a small sample. So because of that, there are challenges by making decision based on a small scale production, and there are perceived or sometimes real production differences. Furthermore, making conclusions or testing market acceptability is difficult when you only have 200 plants. You can't even fill a box sometimes to test. So that was the impetus for providing our growers with at least 1,000 plantlets to test so that they can get a better idea of the commercial performance. After all, making a commitment to plant out a new variety takes a lot of investment on the part of the growers. So we'll try and see how that works. Okay. So the first one that we are propagating, and we did bring boxes of material, is UH 2071, which is a hybrid between tropical and a UH selection. It's a dark red selection that has with a brownish red color, so not quite your usual red. Drawback is that it can be anthracnose susceptible. Okay. And for today, we had brought about 80 magenta boxes or 1,280 plantlets for distribution among our 3 cooperators. Contact Joanne for the boxes since she will be distributing it. So 1,280 plantlets. The second variety that we're looking at is UH 2555, which has an unusual reddish purple color. If you eat lifesavers, raspberry lifesavers, that's the color it has. Very attractive, very unique, and the shape is not quite your heart shape, and that's what we call the more triangular shape. It's glossy and it's a vigorous grower. Okay, so for today, we brought 40 boxes of that, about 640 plantlets. Not quite 1,000 per grower, but we're getting there. And with this grant, we were able to hire 1 student help. And eventually she graduated, so now she's a casual hire and she works 18 hours a week, and she's able to pump out at least 40 to 60 boxes a week, or sometimes even more. So having that support to have somebody to dedicate their time in production is a big help in achieving our goal. Okay. The second objective is to propagate at least 3 cultivars with the best potential for new colors and or physical characteristics in demand by consumers and designers. In the past, I would say almost 10 to 12 years, the industry has taken a different strategy to look at acceptability by working with floral designers. It's about 10 years, 10 to 12 years from now, from about this date. And the reason that this model really works is that when you really think about it, who uses the products? Yes, you'll say the consumer, but who chooses what products to use? Designers, florists. So by working with the people who will use the products, we have a better feel as to what is something that works or may not work. Let me tell you a case in point. We had a nice white flower that was a little bit resistant. Well, it was engineered to be resistant to blight, called Rudolph. So it was white with a red nose, but it never gained acceptability. So we thought it was good, but when you think about it, you spend so many years trying to develop a variety only to find out it's not acceptable. Or maybe it will be acceptable when we have a resurgence, or I don't know, something like throwback, or when fashion comes back. However, Rudolph did not catch the market and was not considered one of the major varieties. So by working with designers, even before we release, we are already gearing ourselves to have a variety that will be useful, that will be desired, and therefore driving the need for production. So with that in mind, we have, we're testing at the time 3 varieties. 2 pink obakes and 1 unusual colored and unusual shaped Anthurium selection. So the plan of work was to name and release the varieties to HFNA. And unlike in the past, we used to just develop mother flask or propagules, we will also release tissue cultured plantlets that will be ready to be planted out, deflasked. And that will already spur the production rather than having to give the propagules to a cooperating lab, have the cooperating lab ramp up production. So we are already set back 3 to 4 years. By doing a 2-prong approach to release, we are already releasing something that can be grown out much faster, while the need can be, projected needs can be fulfilled by orders to the tissue culture lab. So that's the approach we're looking at. So the first variety is UH 1991. And again, I have my colleague Joanne Mura to help name. So at the time when we were talking about releasing, this was about the time that Kapoho already was getting overrun by lava. And we were thinking back one of our phone conversations, we recalled that Kalapana, a red obake, was released shortly after the Kalapana area was overrun by lava. So we're thinking, we did that for Kalapana, and we had a variety named Kalapana. Let's do something for Kapoho, and remember Kapoho. And so Joanne was able to confer with one of their native Hawaiian language speaking colleagues and came up with the name Kapoho Mellow. And mainly the definition that we want to remember it by is the third definition, which talks about progeny, ancestry, breed, family trait, particularly heritage. So we try to remember Kapoho by calling this Kapoho Mellow. Okay. This variety is a large pink obake. The shape, if you notice, is not your typical heart-shaped one. It can get as wide, it's more wide than it is long. So about 6.8 to 7.6 inches, but you can get it as wide as 9.5 inches. Vase life is reasonably long, whether or not you decide to use BA, 34 or 35 days. Fast in tissue culture, that's a really plus. And appears to be tolerant to bacterial blight. However, in the summer, it loses obake or tends to fade. So that's a little drawback. Now, this variety was featured in the Florist review. Remember, with Florist review, you are hitting the designers. That's your contact, your end users. So last year in the June issue, there was a featured issue on products from Hawaii. So the cover says, buying Hawaiian, the softer side of tropicals, destination wedding, tropical trends. And in these, in the article called Exotic Touches, this designed by Lori McNorton features prominently UH 1991. So what does this teach us to? For us researchers, we learn to put aside our biases and not just look at the plant by itself or the flower by itself, but remember that the products we have are team players. They cannot be used by their own, they have to combine well with other floral products. So sometimes now it kind of helps to keep that in mind. So when we're looking at things that are a little bit different from the norm, we stop and think, is this going to be something that can be designed with? And so now even at the selection process, we are consulting with the designers for desirability and whether or not it's something easy to design. So hopefully that will drive demand. Okay. The second pink obake is called Honi Honi. It's a vigorous grower. Still, when you look at the, I think most of you have the handout now. And so you can see that it's a vigorous grower. I won't go over much of the flower sizes. It is occasionally susceptible to anthracnose. However, it seems tolerant to bacterial blight. And it may also be sensitive to some micronutrients, which Joanne has to determine. This was named Honi Honi. It's like a kiss. It's reminiscent of a butterfly kissing a flower, so Honi Honi, and that's 2007, which has a very butterfly-like shape. So that's the name that represents this particular selection. Okay. The third selection that is going to be released is called Maui Bright. It is very long-lasting. As you can see, it's highlighted. It's 81.6 days. It's tolerant to blight and nematodes, which is good. It's a workhorse, I would say. Its unusual color makes it desirable to the designers. Let me tell you one thing. At one point, when we were talking about this, we were like, in the field, we didn't think much of it because we thought it's not your typical color, and we didn't know what was it good for. The designers loved it. And so we were sitting on the fence about purging or not purging, and they decided, no, this is really, really good, keep it. And so this one we decided to keep it. And when we were doing testing in the greenhouse, we didn't realize that it forms double spades. Now this is a novelty. Only thing is we can't predict how many times it will do it, but it does happen. And there's some desire for this too. We named it Maui Bright because one of the designers that we work with, Lois Hiranaga, really liked this particular selection. In 2016, a group of us had design workshop, and we were schooled in what is desirable for the designer, something totally different from what we were thinking. And Lois really liked this flower because she said it has more than one color, it has a transition, and it blends very well for bridal work. So she called this, she posted a tropical blush bridal bouquet. We already had a blushing bride variety, so we thought, no, we can't rename another variety. And with destination weddings becoming more and more popular, and Maui being a popular wedding destination, we decided on the name Maui Bright. Okay. The third objective is to release at least one industry existing cultivar and either orchid or anthurium. So the one on the left is UH1756 Maui. That one we will be releasing in larger quantities for the next 18 months, so we're still working on that, re-releasing. However, for this 18 months, we will be re-releasing this variety on the left called UH1002 Improved Uniy Blush. This is a throwback from the past. It was released in 1991, but we didn't get a lot of requests for seed pods. At the time, the growers preferred to grow UH306 or UH800 straight whites. And the picture on the left was the first Neotropica workshop that Hitomi Gilliam held at Macy's for the Alan Wong restaurant. And at the time, she was saying that sometimes white is not exactly what the designers want, but something softer in color that will help transition the colors together to make a design. So at that particular event, what they were doing was presenting a novel way also of showing off flowers by doing flower groupings. In the past, flowers were just grouped by, this is the whites, and they're all Dendrobium, or these are all Anthuriums, instead of grouping them in possible combinations that can be used. So this was the blush grouping. So there were pink gingers, heliconias, and she found utility for the blush Dendrobium. So because of that and the time that we had between 1991, it's almost 20 years since, or a little bit over 20 years, almost 30 years since release, it's time to bring back something that was desired. We have some varieties that you don't need throwback, you don't need a revival. For instance, Marian Seaforth was released in 1963. There's no stopping Marian Seaforth. However, I think as a breeder, with designers being more and more interested, then Uniy blush is probably a good idea. Improved Uniy blush is a good addition to what product offerings we have now. Yeah. So the fourth objective was to provide results of the research, such as this. So we are still looking at improved vase life. Joanne, this is Joanne's lab, and she's running the vase life with or without BA for the selections. And then we are increasingly aware of issues that we have to deal with, such as resistance to pests and diseases. Oh, let me backtrack. Do you see this? 2 broken stems on the right? That's one of the selections we have in advanced testing. We thought it was really nice flower, doesn't come down with anthracnose. It has some issues. So Joanne sent a couple of pictures of at 2 separate occasions of the flowers breaking. So not every, we'll have to see. She tried doing harvesting earlier, didn't work. So this one we're sitting on the fence, but we are looking at improving vase life, or packing. So this one has some issues with packing. This is a picture. Yesterday I had, I was grateful for Neo and John. Tanoe showed me around, and this was one thing that we saw. One disease that has become problematic again in the Anthurium production. That's anthracnose, also known as black nose. For many years, the breeding program had focused on breeding for resistance to anthracnose. But with climate change, some that were previously thought to be resistant are now coming down, and it's due to probably the new strains, or the weather conditions have been more favorable for development of the disease. Okay, so in summary, our overall goal is to add new germplasm to the industry, and our biggest challenge is the timely delivery of the plant materials to growers, hence the grants. And with that, with the timely delivery of plant materials to growers, we can hopefully aim for increased production. And that makes everybody happy with the increased production. And to meet the increased production, our tissue culture lab is gearing up to produce plantlets for immediate field planting, as well as mother flasks. And we hope that there will be more tissue culture labs to pick up the slack, so that the lack of materials won't be a bottleneck anymore. Oops. Like anything, we always are faced with challenges. And so some of the challenges we will face, this is disease. We are trying to meet the challenge by probably hoping to have, crossing our fingers, varieties that don't show the disease. In particular, we have the top right is EEV, a variety that was released I believe in 2015. Doesn't seem to show anthracnose. So maybe it's time we gear up production of EEV. And the red in the middle panel is one of our selections, UH2237. Didn't seem to show anthracnose either, as compared to Kozohara, which is highly susceptible to anthracnose. The 3 panels of orchids, Dendrobium orchids on the left and one middle one, illustrate orchids from Kamaili nursery. And they were devastated by sulfur dioxide fumes. However, when the first pictures came out, one of my colleagues in Taiwan said, you know what? Check which ones recover fast, because there might be some tolerance to the fumes. So it's good to see, or if there might be a particular stage that might be strong again, or allow the plant to bounce back, recover from sulfur dioxide. So when we looked at this, we saw some varieties that bounced back. That's UH 1427, I believe. There's nice growth. There's the nursery's yellow variety, and there was one that we had released, oh no, not released, advanced tested, that was still in the beds. That's UH 1747, and it was there. And that UH 1747 is actually one of the deliverables that we have planned for one of our grant, for the next 18 months, I believe, in the new germplasm grant. So there's hope. I'd like to end on a hopeful note that despite all the challenges, we might have some that we'll just have to look more closely and see how can we beat, or how can we meet the needs, how can we identify the plants that will help us face the challenges.
My question is any research being done on more orchids, specifically like mendacious cut flowers?
At the moment, we don't have funding to do mendacious cut flowers. So because of that, our focus has been on Dendrobium and mendacious cut flowers. I'm sorry, Dendrobium rather than mendacious cut flowers. Secondly, our program has had a lot of historically worked on Dendrobium. So at that moment, we don't have the space to test out varieties.
So not as much knowledge on...
Correct. Not as much knowledge and not as much space.
In this room, I'm sure there is quite a few growers or people who are familiar with it, and then perhaps they can sympathize why I'm asking this.
Yes.
My personal experience all the way till the lava flow was very, very positive. I'm a small potato in this field, but I'm very impressed with what I have learned through these previous years. And I think for Hawaii, it would have an awesome potential going forward.
Thank you.
Specifically with mendacious cut flower, because it's been 4 or 5 months, I don't have any more, but I'm still receiving calls.
Wow. So there is a demand.
Receiving calls, and they asking me to, can I connect them with people who have them? And unfortunately, nobody have them. They have to go to Thailand or other places. And not too many people here perhaps know what I'm talking about, but that's what few do. I just wanted to bring it up to you. I think that is an awesome opportunity for researchers in that segment.
Absolutely. Maybe we can work on something to get that
Just
done.
a thought.
No. Yes.
I felt like I need to share it.
Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, sorry. One more question.
Can see the 1747, the one in the picture. Is that also a blush?
Yes.
And I think that flower was bigger than the
1002.
Than the 1002.
Slightly bigger and slightly longer. But at least we'll have two different, we never grew them side by side. So I think it would be a good opportunity to grow them side by side and see what will give. Will they complement each other? Will they have different peaks? So that would be something worth testing, maybe on a limited quantity.
Possibly some fragrance in that one?
For 1002.
1002 or
1747, it's been a while. I don't think the fragrance, for me, the 44 still has the best fragrance. So that might be something worth considering. And if you folks want to resurrect 44, let me know. That might be something that might be, I'm thinking interest in fragrance, bridal bouquets and things like that. Although you have roses, of course, but it might be something worth looking into. But yes, we did release 1747, and I remember you liked growing 1747 too. I mean, pre-released. We didn't really do an official release on that one. But we hope to do that before the 3rd year ends. So for the 1002, seed pods have been made. And I'd like to also say that in July, we had the Ag Discovery program where high school kids, 10 high school kids from all over the U.S. came over. And they had a module with us, and it was on orchid pollination. And so we brought seeds today that were pollinated by the students. And prior to doing their pollinations, we showed a video of Elton that was on the Star Bulletin website. So the students learned why they wanted to do, why it was important to make the pollinations, and what the impact would be on Hawaii agriculture and the orchid industry in particular. So they were really excited to make seed pods, knowing that it would come over to help the industry. So we were able to produce some seed pods out of that activity. Learning experience for the students and making it real for them, knowing somebody benefits. Okay. Thank you.
I wanted to mention that Dr. Omori's presentation has so much value because the timing for the legislature, they start in January, and this project was funded by the what we call the barrel tax, the Agriculture Food Security Fund, and in January we have to defend the funding that they gave us. It would be the chair and Phyllis standing in front of the legislature saying, so what did you do with that $500,000 we gave you? And now we can say that, you know, check out the video. Listen to Dr. Omori's presentation. This is what we've done. And it really helps because the barrel tax, the Food Security Fund, is supposed to be to reduce imports, keep Hawaii self-sufficient, and it's definitely going in the right direction. And Dr. Omori is doing such a good job. You could feel her passion, you know, and it's easy to get the funding. I don't want to say easy, but you can be very thankful that Eric and his team, Judy, are putting together grants that that the legislature will fund. And as to the question about the Vandaceous, is that what you said? It's all about the funding. And lately, as we go through these types of research projects, I've come to think that funding is the new F word, because as you're going along and you're thinking, this is so great, this is so good, and all of a sudden somebody says funding, and you go, oh. Right? So your job is to go to the legislature and convince them, or convince Eric, that you need funding because this is a very important thing.